light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome to the 500th episode, being recorded at the United Center in Idaho Springs, Colorado. I am Sister Who. How does one summarize 30 years of ministerial work and service? For nearly 450 episodes, the presentations I have done have been unscripted. This time, however, in creating an hour-long special that I initially never imagined I would ever do, I have spent literally months writing and rewriting what seemed most important to mention and remember. The text that follows, therefore, may turn out to be a partial presentation guided by intuition. Of special note is that there was a very substantial concern on December 31st, 1994, that no more shows would ever be recorded. Episode 53, recorded that and the previous day, subtitled The Final Episode, was an unprecedented hour-long interview with myself in and out of ritual garb. The administration of the time was so adversarial and discouraging, in spite of my being the only producer in that organization's history to produce 4 complete half-hour shows within a single 4-hour block of studio time, which I actually did on 3 occasions. Regardless, at the time that episode 53 was recorded, production was also a year ahead of schedule, and whenever not in active production during subsequent years, episodes have continued to be recablecast again and again. Nonetheless, active production resumed in November of 1997 in Billings, Montana, under an administration positively thrilled to have someone with imagination and vision using their somewhat limited facilities, which is when recording without a script became the norm. After 30 to 40 new episodes, active production returned to the earlier administration in Denver, Colorado, but was stalled after a couple dozen or so new episodes by adversity and discouragement, even worse than what had previously occurred. At that point, I was finally able to purchase a basic but adequate camera and began creating new episodes within any space available. That's when I started creating 6 episodes within approximately 4 hours of time, a practice that remains the norm to the present day. Yet this is not a monetary venture, but rather a labor of love and service. I sometimes joke that mine is a no-budget production, such that everything must be done as inexpensively as possible. Nonetheless, I want to do all the good that I can for as long as I'm able, because at some point my life will end and I will be gone, leaving no more opportunities for me to create additional episodes. I can only hope that I will have done enough to make a positive difference, that others will dedicate themselves to similar work. Yet I do not do this ministerial work to draw attention to myself. In truth, I am often besieged by doubts. That is why I began printing and framing positive responses from viewers to remind myself of why I persist in what I do. These are only a portion of the responses I have received, but I pass them in my stairwell several times each day, reminding me of why I persist. I do not display them here in any expression of pride, but rather so that those people may be present with me during this recording through the presence of their words, as if there were as many as 70 other people standing with me on this stage, encouraging me to keep going, especially during those times when I feel inadequate. I was never designed nor equipped to fit in, nor in any way to be normal. Being born both gay and autistic within a conservative Midwestern agrarian environment was an incredibly bad combination, which perhaps explains why I have been estranged from all biological relations for more than 30 years. The best explanation I read shortly after being diagnosed with autism is that it is as if the brain has been wired backwards so that details are perceived before generalities and everything is hyper-focused. often creating an overwhelming influx of perception for the brain to process. Metaphorically, it's analogous to looking at a jigsaw puzzle, and instead of seeing a picture composed of many pieces, one perceives hundreds or thousands of pieces competing for attention. In response to an occasion that I was challenged to describe myself in relation to people who had completely rejected and devalued me, a lyrical response composed within the days that followed seeks to raise the basic forms of such relationships to a new and genuinely empowering level. As with other songs of particular inspiration, the words remain unchanged since original composition, suggesting that my life may be more defined by what is beyond my understanding than by what is within it. I rise in the morning and see the new day, stumbling along an uncertain way, wanting to find in each moment I see that which is real and the one who is me. My father is wisdom, my mother is love, within and without, below and above, the earth and the sky, the hawk and the dove. My father is wisdom, my mother is love. I run through the fields in the warm noontime sun, a race to my finish already begun, pretending my arms are wings that can soar to still higher places where I can learn more. My father is wisdom, my mother is love, within and without, below and above, the earth and the sky, the hawk and the dove. My father is wisdom, my mother is love. In the evening I listen at my father's knee, I attend to my mother's beckoning plea. I speak from my heart with my voice very loud, that what I want most is to make them both proud. My father is wisdom, my mother is love, within and without, below and above, the earth and the sky, the hawk and the dove. My father is wisdom, my mother is love. One day to the next, my journey goes on. Through tears and through laughter, I learn a new song. A song for the orphan and the one who's in pain, that through wisdom and love they be healed once again. My father is wisdom, my mother is love, within and without, below and above, the earth and the sky, the hawk and the dove. My father is wisdom, my mother is love. My father is wisdom, my mother is love. That I did not know what gay was until my late 20s and was not diagnosed with autism until the age of 50 only complicated the challenge I faced. Specifically because of my then undiagnosed autism, however, I oriented to details and developed a strong sense of individuality very early in life, which made living within a neurotypical world obsessed with generalities and categorization quite difficult. A psychologist once directly asked, "Why are you still alive?" I think my response was some form of, "I don't know, perhaps I'm too stubborn to quit." Being consistently proactive and self-motivated may be the reason I have accomplished as much as I have. This includes hiking 16 of the highest mountains in Colorado in complete ritual garb, being awarded a silver medal in an amateur bodybuilding competition, receiving a bachelor's degree in humanities, a master's degree in theological studies, and a second master's degree in human development, rebuilding more than 3 houses, recording 4 albums of original songs, and being currently engaged in the completion of a doctoral degree. With the help of the same brilliant sound engineer who facilitated the first 4 albums and is willing to briefly come out of retirement, a 5th album of original songs is currently in development. I'm still uncertain, however, whether any of that makes me special. I simply did some of what available opportunities and resources would allow. It is rather wondrous to consider that each of us will always be given more opportunities than we're able to embrace. Parallel to all of this were occasions of involvement with what some have described as the gay and lesbian community or civil rights movement, which to my observation may have been a recognizable segment of the population, but rarely, if ever, has demonstrated the qualities of true community. In most ways, I've never so much been a political activist as a citizen willing to speak up, which perhaps identifies me as occasionally a social activist, but not enough to be part of my basic identity. More consistently, I'm an artist and an interfaith minister of mostly unprecedented inclusivity. My interactions within various contexts have included, to the best of my ability without judgment, virtually every belief and relational categorization one can name. I still remember the evening I traveled with a bus filled with others to a memorial concert performed by the famous trio, Peter, Paul, and Mary in Laramie, Wyoming, in honor of Matthew Shepard, who had previously been murdered there simply for being gay. Matthew's parents appeared with them on stage at the conclusion of the concert, at which time members of the audience were invited to meet and speak with the performers at a table set up backstage. When I attempted to approach, however, an obviously terrified police officer denied me entrance. I was baffled, considering the concert we had just witnessed, that not a single one of the other gays, lesbians, or audience members present in any way objected or intervened. Perhaps my presence was a mirror to allow them to see themselves, specifically in regard to what they truly believed. I often insist that if one doesn't believe it enough to do it, one doesn't really believe it at all. My first participation within an annual gay pride parade, while dressed in ritual garb, occurred in 1991, at which time, in commemoration of the Stonewall riots of 1969 in New York City, the general practice was to simply show up and walk the route while demonstrating one's openness and honesty about being whomever and whatever one found oneself to be. Over time, participation gravitated toward corporate sponsorship, and individual participation began to diminish. I occasionally walked with individuals who would have otherwise walked alone, but gradually developed a practice of arriving at the staging location alone and first walking toward the end of the lineup, greeting and encouraging individuals whom I had not seen since the previous year's event. When I arrived at the last participant in the lineup, I would then turn and move toward the front, again greeting and encouraging everyone I could along the way. Since I tended to walk more quickly, I would pass each group and ultimately arrive at the state capitol building fairly close to the very beginning of the parade. One particular year, I attempted to pass a Pentecostal church group just as it left the park where a lineup for the parade had occurred. Unfortunately, a significant portion of the membership was not only present, but also dancing to their very upbeat music in a way that formed a virtual wall across the street. I decided I would dance along with them until the next intersection, then duck around the end of the human wall and move further ahead. After all, we were all aligned with the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender population in specifically spiritual ways anyway. After about only 20 feet of forward movement, however, the music abruptly stopped. In the subsequent silence, the lesbian minister riding on the central platform called to everyone within hearing, "Sister Who, move away, we don't want you walking with us." I was stunned that once again no one objected. Whatever advocacy for inclusivity and tolerance was needed, I would have to do it all alone. I walked to the wall of congregants, stopped, and asked the person in front of me, "May I be allowed to pass?" Like the biblical parting of the Red Sea, the person stepped aside, I stepped through, and nothing more was said, even when I later passed within 10 feet of the same minister during the subsequent Pride Fest event. On another occasion, I was told that I wasn't gay enough because I had never performed within a gay or lesbian bar. I simply shrugged and said that I've never been requested to do so because I'm a minister and a teacher rather than an entertainer or a performance artist. Several years later, again complaining to the organizers of how economically exclusive annual events oriented to gay and lesbian pride had become, I was informed by an email, which is now part of the archive of Sister Who within the Denver Public Library Western History Department, that Sister Who was no longer welcome at these events. I recall the time-worn witticism that those who do not know the mistakes of the past are condemned to repeat them. I've often been guided by a verse attributed to Pastor Martin Niemöller, a World War II Holocaust survivor, which identifies numerous groups, each time remarking that because he wasn't one of them, he said nothing, before concluding, "When at last they came for me, there was no one left to speak up." For this reason, I had earlier made a point of participating within the 1993 March on Washington, D.C. for LGBT civil rights, but both from this as well as from participation in several incidences of the Gay Games and the World Out Games, I retain a belief that there are as many ways to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or straight as there are people associated with such categorizations. It was with these values in mind that I participated in numerous Martin Luther King parades and also traveled to Washington, D.C. at my own expense in 2003 to participate within an anti-war demonstration that included a large number of Muslims. I may have been the least expected person there. In an attempt to give a voice of empathy to a friend experiencing specifically a transgender transition, who later tragically committed suicide, I composed a song reflecting that perspective and gave her the experience of being the first person to perform the song publicly. Specifically because that concert was recorded, she was therefore able to sing at her own memorial service, facilitated by myself. Dedicated to Lillian Grace Marlowe, I would like to share that with you now. For so very long I remember my reflection wasn't me, but a different form and a different norm, something I was supposed to be. I remember touching others with hands that weren't my own. I remember being something that's no longer so unknown. Now my soul knows its face, and my heart finally knows its place. There's still a chance that my feet will dance, and my voice will sing out my true name. The music of my heart and hands, a holy mystery forever stands. For love unknown within has grown to become the gift of me. I remember being hungry for love without demands. I remember being lonely in a world of shifting sands. I remember to the moment when the sun began to rise. I remember the revelation and tears of joy within my eyes. Now my soul knows its face, and my heart finally knows its place. There's still a chance that my feet will dance and my voice will sing out my true name. The music of my heart and hands, a holy mystery forever stands. For love unknown within has grown to become the gift of me. Do you share with me the memory of life that wants to start? Would you share the great discovery of courage of the heart? Would you make the great commitment to be who you really are? Can we finally stand together and fill the night with stars? My soul knows its phase, and my heart finally knows its place. There's still a chance that my feet will dance and my voice will sing out my true name. The music of my heart and hands, a holy mystery forever stands. For love unknown within has grown to become the gift of me. For love unknown within has grown to become the gift of me. The first time I volunteered to assist with an annual AIDS-related fundraiser, I was told not to come because it would somehow distract from the primary message of the event, as if persons such as myself were unconcerned with the AIDS epidemic, which actually, after more than 40 years, has never ended and now includes a cumulative death toll of over 32 million. History includes, however, as told to me by my spiritual godmother, Sister X, who was the one who gave me my name, that the first safer sex education and the first AIDS-related fundraiser were done in 1983 by a theatrical group of gay men in San Francisco using the name the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. The former was a pamphlet entitled Play Fair, and the latter was a dog show for the San Francisco Kaposi Sarcoma Foundation, which was performed on Castro Street and ultimately, but unintentionally, facilitated by none other than the actress Shirley MacLaine. Regardless, I was also told that during the early 1990s, to never appear at a large metropolitan monthly meeting of parents and friends of lesbians and gays, but was later invited to be the monthly speaker at the meeting of a chapter in a smaller town, after which the organizers were so impressed that they said they would find opportunities for me to speak at other chapters. Apparently they were unsuccessful. The challenge in any case is not to love someone in spite of a particular quality, but rather to love unconditionally and allow each person to make whatever choices are most honest and compelling. The question has been posed of whether I'd want to become the norm for gay or lesbian youth in the process of embracing their individual identities. But I usually laugh and respond, do you actually know someone who is interested in doing 3 hours of face paint before each public appearance? If there are such persons, I've never met them. But it's not a matter of being like me, but rather more authentically and honestly being free to be oneself in positive relationship to everyone else around. Interesting to note is that the small Toyota pickup truck used to transport set pieces to and from the studio for the first 55 shows not only is still running, but came into my possession within the last 2 years, and is the means by which all set pieces for this production have once again been transported. The primary relationship that largely defined my home life during the early years of this ministry, however, ended quite a number of years ago. In retrospect, I find myself wondering if he ever truly accepted himself as a gay man, or if he was another individual so besieged by the mental illness of narcissism that he was unable to have an honest, loving relationship with anyone. Even at the time, he was always concerned with maintaining a closet around who he truly was, and in recent years has gone out of his way to deny that he ever identified as a gay man, as if he is ashamed of the 9 years I invested in building my life around his. I attempted to show him more open and inclusive possibilities, but his personal choices veered in the opposite direction. What transcended that transition out of a primary relationship, curiously, was the enduring activity of this ministry. Without exception, every time I secretly considered a termination of ministerial activity, someone approached me within 48 hours to inform me of a profound difference I had made and to beg me to never quit. I finally spent 3 weeks in prayer during the autumn of 1998 asking why it was so important for this ministerial work to continue. The answer that at last came through was a long-term goal of the creation and operation of a genuinely interfaith spiritual retreat and conference center for individuals and small groups of any belief system or none, to nurture spiritual, quote, to nurture spiritual growth without dogma or discrimination. The word God is defined far more broadly than most ever recognize, and by definition, the reality to which this word refers is beyond complete human comprehension and wrapped in mystery. Whatever the truth of that word actually is, I'm fairly certain it's not what any church or religion has ever said. Even atheists need some sort of conception by which they can refrain from any fear of death and live their lives in an unrestricted and creative way, remaining open to discovery rather than being merely a reaction to any part of a surrounding environment. The metaphor I often use for myself is that I am a glass of water contemplating the ocean. Regardless, only time will tell when and where this precedent-setting place will finally manifest. Tentatively entitled God's Space Sanctuary, the focus is upon creating space and growth within one's life for whatever equates to the divine. On a related note, one particular evening, a friend who experienced a particular artistic calling requested the composition of a song expressing how difficult it can be to wait for such creativity to find a place within the confused and broken world within which we live. Just over 12 hours later, meditating upon the mysterious spirituality that often seems present within genuinely creative works, I wrote another song which remains unchanged ever since its original composition. I hope that it may help creative individuals to have faith in their inspirations, even when doing so remains difficult. And I dedicate this performance to Sharon for creating opportunity for these words. As I walked into the room, he stared down at the floor. Never been creative, he said to me, but I long for something more. Now you're here, I smiled to him, to learn what color is for. Let's paint the image your soul knows through imagination's door. I placed the brush within his hands, calloused and untrained, and guided him to trust its touch, which can never be explained. A light began to shine at last from his deep and darkened eyes. And then I woke within my bed to once again realize the dream I have has yet to find its perfect time and place. Yet by the holiness and love it holds, I know I'll see its face as the one you've chosen to bestow within this very troubled time. I'll do my best to serve, dear God, this healing touch of thine. The towers round the worship space and the open frame above, people gather within to learn to pray in peace and love. Each as different as can be in what they call divine, yet each one needing something more to at last step across the line. I take their hands and smile again as our steps begin to dance. I help them find the confidence to finally take a chance. I shine my light through each word I speak, through each insight I convey, then wake again within my bed and wistfully say, the dream I have has yet to find its perfect time and place, yet by the holiness and love it holds, I know I'll see its face as the one you've chosen to bestow within this very troubled time. I'll do my best to serve, dear God, this healing touch of thine. A world of doubt, a world of fear, a world of broken glass, a world of wounded, weary ones wanting love nearby to pass. Where would a dreamer be needed more than where dreams cannot be found? Where better the musicians tune than where there isn't any sound. Once again I drift off to sleep, knowing soon the day will come when what was a dream is now the world playing in the sun. Yet if for now it must be a dream, it's a dream that I will hold until that morning bright and clear when such beauty will unfold. The dream I have has yet to find its perfect time and place, yet by the holiness and love it holds, I know I'll see its face as the one you've chosen to bestow within this very troubled time. I'll do my best to serve, dear God, this healing touch of thine. I'll do my best to serve, dear God, this healing touch of thine. It was once suggested that I participate in festivals of various kinds, but creating an appropriate context for myself required a number of years of development, because simply standing behind a folding table would only draw attention to how very anomalous I am. What ultimately emerged was an absolutely unique structure that I call my portable chapel. Innumerable individuals have commented on the peace and spiritual focus they feel within the space whenever it is publicly employed. It has also been the site of innumerable moments of profound spiritual counseling and prayer, which I did my best to serve as well as possible. Of some note is that being Sister Who is specifically the reason I began and eventually completed a master's degree in theological studies. During that time, I also began writing modern versions of morality plays, featuring myself as a sort of everyman character. What most people do not know is that I received electronic anonymous hate mail 3 days before the first performance and was very shaken emotionally, but understood that it was all the more important to go forward with the presentation. That particular graduate level institution was so impressed with that first play that a professor included quotes during class the next day. Numerous people openly discussed the content for 2 weeks, and I was given an award for demonstrating interest and ability in innovative worship at the end of the year. To my surprise, within my doctoral program, now nearing completion, upon hearing of various experiences, my faculty mentor was insistent that Sister Who be part of my dissertation. A few years prior, I had also created 78 distinct photographs that were used for the Tarot of Sister Who. which is essentially a pictorial language of symbols designed to support continued personal and spiritual growth. Again and again, at the moment, I imagine that this ministerial work has done as much that it can do. Activity instead expands into unprecedented areas. Among such possibilities is the dynamic I seem to have embodied of being a bridge between contrasting points of view and experience, striving to affirm the inclusivity of the extended family that humanity ultimately is. With this in mind, I wrote a song for a holiday special containing verses from more than a half dozen diverse frames of spiritual experience, which are ultimately summarized within the chorus and final verse. Light that is love, light that is peace, within and all around, may it shine in you and me. Around the world we all join hands and our voices start to sing. Let there be peace, let there be love to every living thing. Light that is love, light that is peace, within and all around, may it shine in you and me. Within and all around, may it shine in you and me. An additional area of activity since 2005 is that I create an inspirational calendar each year featuring photos and quotes of Sister who is an example of the archetypal sacred clown. The idea is to provide a caption and a photo that one can ponder for an entire month and still find inspiration and insight from the first day until the last. Consequently, there have been dozens upon dozens of photo shoots within diverse locations until the resulting photos now number 238. On one such occasion, in Confluence Park in Denver, Colorado, an intelligent black girl of approximately 11 years in age stood nearby and made the comment, "Ooh, scary," although she did not appear particularly frightened in any way. "Which part seems most scary?" I asked. "The purple on your face," she responded, whereafter I spent about 3 minutes reciting every symbolism that came to mind of the color purple and the specific placement of that face paint. She was silent, apparently thinking carefully about everything I just said. "So, are you still afraid?" I asked. Her eyes became real wide, very wide, and with obvious surprise, she responded, "No, I'm not." "See," I continued, "when you feel afraid, it means you're supposed to ask a question, that you need more information in order to understand what you are perceiving." I have no doubt that she grew up to become a most exceptional young woman. I will not attempt, however, to tell the whole of my life story within this relatively small format, even though there is so much more that could be said. The goal is to reflect upon those elements that have most described or influenced the accomplishment of today's recording, in spite of an enormous amount of adversity encountered along the way. The historical reality is that I am here and this is happening. So in words from my second morality play, what sort of person will you show yourself to be? Of particular note are the amazing crew members with whom I have been blessed to work throughout the last 28 years of production. One was a man who was involved more than anyone else within the first 55 recordings, to whom the first episode recorded in Montana was dedicated. since a heart attack claimed his life only a few months earlier. Another was present for literally hundreds of subsequent recordings within my home. Others have included Ukrainian immigrants, grandmothers, people with disabilities, and every other imaginable description. In words attributed to the perhaps controversial person of Mother Teresa, it is not a question of being a special person, but rather of coming to a situation, seeing what one can do, and doing it. With such a dedication to service in mind, within one of the morality plays I composed, this prompted the following chorus as a musical transition between dialogues. In my nothingness, seeds of life may grow. In my somethingness, light may finally show. In my growingness, wisdom I may know. In my beingness, love may finally flow. Specifically because public access television requires collaboration without judgment, I still remember the day when a man assisted with my production as a camera operator before requesting that I operate the control room for subsequent recording he wished to make. So while still dressed in ritual garb, I moved switches and sliders for recording promoting the John Birch Society. What remains essential, no matter what one's opinion may be, is ongoing constructive dialogue. Philosophically, with perhaps surprising consistency, I have maintained since the very beginning, that a person is a person after all, which actually arises from a viewing of an animated version of Dr. Seuss' Horton Hears a Who that I still remember from early childhood. In a similar way, in attempting to respond to questions regarding my gender, I've never attempted to hide the fact that I'm a gay man. But thanks to Dr. Seuss, I consider my ministerial alter ego to be a deeper level of personhood which precedes gender and orientation. More directly, in moving toward any sort of wholeness as an individual, one must first consider what it means to have a unique consciousness, perspective, and voice, to be a who. The next consideration is to ponder how this voice is subsequently modified by having a particular gender, further modified by having a particular orientation, and thereafter influenced by various cultural, linguistic, and religious societal qualities. The problem with any sort of categorization, which includes all forms of bigotry, is the imposition of various kinds of blindness. One inescapably projects the qualities associated with the category instead of engaging in honest dialogue to learn the truth of the particular individuals. Hence my recommendation to stop chasing the categories. Labels can only suggest questions to ask, but never answers to hold. It is imperative that one instead pursue whatever is individually appropriate to one's personal and spiritual growth, specifically because of the ways these are essential to the ongoing renewal which sustains life. Far too much time is required to be comprehensive about myself, but a reminder should be mentioned that every detail of my ritual garb and face paint has one or more possible metaphoric or symbolic interpretations. I do not attempt to dictate the answers anyone must hold, but rather to encourage questions, thought, and reflection in ways that inspire personal and spiritual growth. More concisely, I am an opportunity which some embrace and some avoid, but I remain the complex and multidimensional being that I am, eager to serve love and wisdom in any way I can. A standing invitation remains to nearly anyone and everyone willing to have a generally timeless, respectful, and thought-provoking discussion to be a guest within future episodes, understanding that there should never be a final word to any discussion. Learning and growth, by their very nature, need to remain ongoing. No perspective or voice should ever be silenced, but it is equally important that none ever be interpreted as a dogmatic recommendation. The definition of dogmatism: any claim that there is only one right answer, and it's the one I'm about to tell you. In truth, every dialogue needs to be an ongoing dialogue. Blaming is simply one of the ways to avoid doing that. Remembering conversely that symbiotic relationships are fundamental and that love is always essential. This is expressed within a simple musical transition when another of my morality plays. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Associating with numerous academics within my graduate level studies, most of whom claim to be concerned about social justice issues, I noticed there is no such issue that is not in some way related to economic disparity, yet activities addressing this incongruity seem minimal at best. This doesn't mean that the task is hopeless, but rather that opposing economic disparity is a challenge that is ongoing, present, and applicable to every citizen. Taken one step further, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, when oppression becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Basic love and decency demand this. Narcissism, the negation of relationship, is a mental illness that is adversarial to any sort of relationship. We live within an age characterized by, among other things, economic obsession. If this were focused upon anything else, it would also be immediately regarded as a mental illness. For questionable reasons, any obsession with money is often not only excused, but also enabled. To my observation, however, with amazing consistency and no exceptions, when money becomes the measure, relationships always suffer. Conversely, but in a similar way, the quote has often been repeated, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. In contemplating this deeply, however, I finally recognized that there is only one exception: love. Love is the power that brings all other powers into harmony. If love does not go first, however, the quote remains true. Another aspect of 3 decades of this unconventional ministry is the way the context has changed. The first ever appearance in ritual garb occurred on June 2nd, 1991 in Paris, France. But when I envisioned returning to the site of original manifestation 20 years later in 2011, I was unable to find sufficient French collaboration to accomplish this. Apparently that wasn't meant to be, but on a similar note, sufficient collaboration to celebrate the occasion was also conspicuously absent within the US. An accusation could be made that I haven't created as much of a positive impact as I hoped, but responses from literally around the world suggest otherwise. In fact, since the time an internet YouTube channel was created 12 years ago, I have now received viewer responses from 5 of the world's 7 continents, and am in the process of translating episodes of Sister Who Presents into German and Spanish, thanks to both requests from viewers and volunteer assistance. The count of subscribers to my YouTube channel at this point is over 3,500. I even still remember the day I hiked to the summit of Quandary Peak, somewhere above 14,000 feet in elevation in central Colorado, and met a woman coming down the trail who asked, "Aren't you the one I've seen on television?" I smiled and responded, "Why, yes, however did you find me?" On another occasion, while doing a photo shoot for my inspirational calendar, specifically for a photo to be taken at a major ski resort, I was crossing a plaza area to tell the public relations representative that I had arrived. The only other person who happened to be in the plaza at that moment suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's you." I hadn't heard her words, but I was distracted and turned in her direction, at which point she simply asked, "Can I have a hug?" "Of course, no problem." For perhaps a couple of decades at this point, it has been noted that one never knows where Sister Who will next appear, although the list thus far includes Montreal, Sydney, Paris, Amsterdam, Oklahoma City, San Francisco, Seattle, Billings, New York City, Washington, D.C., Denver, and of course, innumerable wilderness locations. In fact, I was even included within the gay pride sequence within the movie Jeffrey, which also featured a large number of major Hollywood stars. The point, however, is not any acclaim that has occurred, but rather remaining focused upon serving every encounter that arises. So the work goes on, regardless of whether or not it is in any way financially self-supporting. In spite of whatever abilities I may have in areas of creativity and spirituality, the contrasting areas of bookkeeping, bureaucracy, and business management are areas in which I must depend upon others, although I seem to do fairly well at spending extremely little on set design and construction. I use computers extensively, but there are a great number of technological challenges which remain beyond my reach and consequently must be done by others if they are done at all. My part is to persist in being whatever embodiment of wisdom and love I'm able to be, and therefore bring a sort of divine presence to every circumstance and situation I experience. Considering the diversity of humanity's cultures, languages, and perspectives, inclusivity is everyone's job. To respond effectively to life's spectrum of challenges, we require more than the wisdom, understanding, and ability that any single individual possesses. We have to work together. Whether typical or anomalous, every example is important, individuals, groups, and the whole of creation. Empowering each with as much love and wisdom as possible is at the heart of every recommendable philosophical and spiritual conception. Translating the central commitment to kindness across what could otherwise become linguistic or cultural barriers is central to the, thus far, 3 decades of service I've offered. So in conclusion, I would like to extend to each of you, in 4 languages, the blessing of Sister Who, and earnestly hope that your personal understanding of these words will continue to grow. May one and all and everything blessed and loved ever be. May one and all and everything blessed and loved ever be. Möge jeder Einzelne und jeder Mann und alles geliebt und gesegnet immer sein. Möge jeder Einzelne und jeder Mann und alles geliebt und gesegnet immer sein. Que les autres et tout partout soient aimés et très bien bénis. Que les autres et tout partout Sois aimé et très bien béni. Uno, todos y todo, amados y benditos por siempre. Uno, todos y todo, amados y benditos por siempre. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved ever be. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved ever be. Blessed and loved ever be. Thank you very much for watching. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours